welcome everybody. My name's Alex. I'm with Outbuild and I'm here to just sort of intro and kick things off. Today we're going to be talking about with our esteemed customer WPC, specifically with Sam and Larry from WPC, and they're going to talk to us about how Outbuild has really helped them transform the schedule from just yet another process that they had to follow into something that they're really leveraging as a power tool to drive enhanced project performance. Because we do have kind of a mixed group, some of you might be more familiar with Outbuild than others. I will do a very, very short introduction to Outbuild, and then we'll get over to the main content, which is the conversation with Sam and Larry. So just for a little bit of context on Outbuild and why we're here, many of you are probably familiar with this type of really complicated, very detailed schedule in a legacy scheduling software like MS Project or P6. This is sort of how things were done for, decades, ever since these things came out in the 80s and 90s. And back then, the thinking was really, let's try to plan everything in advance. Let's try to think through every single possible thing and build really complex schedules. And that's how we're going to try to mitigate risk. But the issue with this is that this is completely detached from what's happening in the field. This is just a document that lives in a file on someone's computer. And it's very difficult to reconcile this with the realities of what starts to happen and how things change once we break ground. So everyone kind of realized we need to involve the field in planning and scheduling. We need that feedback loop happening. But there weren't really any tools in place to manage that. So we ended up with whiteboards with sticky notes, Excel files. This is a step in the right direction, but we still have the issue of the disconnect between the field and the office. It now takes manual effort to reconcile this whiteboard back with that schedule that lives in a file. Thankfully, Outbuild is now here to solve that problem. Outbuild is a collaborative scheduling and planning solution. So it has tools to empower the field to do their detailed look aheads and their detailed plans and directly feed information on potential roadblocks, progress, right back to the master schedule. And Outbuild also does have a full CPM schedule creator and editor. So it's really bringing the whole process into one place and closing that feedback loop, making sure everybody has visibility and that the people who are in charge of what's happening on site have some say and input into what the plan looks like, and they're able to communicate important updates back to the office. I'm not going to go into like a full demo. That's just like a high level intro. We're going to focus our conversation now on talking with Sam Miller, who is a partner in PX over at WPC, and Larry Muller, who is a general super. And that will be moderated by Brittany Evans, who is on the Outbuild customer success team. So she is someone who directly works with our clients to get them up to speed and then make sure that they're having a lot of success with using Outbuild and using it effectively. So I will turn it over to all of you so that we can learn a little bit more about how WPC is using it.
Thank you so much, Alex. First off, I want to thank Sam and Larry for being here today. I know you guys are busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time out to join this webinar. I'm going to start things off with a pretty easy question. What types of work does WPC do, and what are your roles at WPC? I know Alex kind of said a little bit about your titles, but if you could elaborate that, especially in regards to scheduling and planning.
Yeah, sure thing. Sure thing. So thanks again, Brittany, Alex, for having us. We appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being here at the same token. And yeah, what an awesome opportunity. We've had absolutely a fantastic intro with Outbuild, and we continue to look forward to the future with that. But yeah, WPC, 51 years in the construction industry. We started off as a framing contractor in the early 70s. I've actually get to introduce Larry from a very interesting story. But 51 years, we're a multi-box builder. We like to stay in our lane when it comes to multifamily, senior housing, student living. We will dabble in some hospitality if it's here, and then we've got a renovations arm that we've continued to expand upon over the last 10 years. But my name's Sam. I'm Sam Miller. I'm a project executive and a partner. grew up within the construction industry itself, got a civil engineering background, and then I was actually hired out of college. My next door neighbor was the COO of Winter Park Construction at the time, so we had a interesting intro, but have since learned in the field, grown myself up to what I am now, and have had the fantastic opportunity of having great people around me. So I attribute a lot of where I'm at to the folks that are around me, including the man that's next to me. He's 47 years tenure. I get the pleasure of introducing him, by the way, Brittany and Alex, because we talked about this beforehand. But Larry's been with us for 47 years. He's what's your employee number, Larry?
Well, when I started, they didn't have numbers because there were only 6 of us that worked here when I started in 1977.
So
Before everyone was born.
So that gives everybody context. So where Larry is and came from, Larry started out as a carpenter helper, and then has since worked his way into a general superintendent. Larry has since gone into we'll call it a semi-retirement, but he's really taken the championship or champion role with our schedule introduction with Outbuild. Has extensive training within scheduling and is actually what we would consider to be our in-house trainer for what was Microsoft Project and is now Outbuild.
Yeah, let me just add that Brittany, Colin, and others at Outbuild have really done a good job of making this transition for us very smooth. They've always been available, offered to do whatever training we need. So it's been a very good experience for us up until this point, for sure.
Thank you so much, Larry and Sam. Great introductions. All right, so if you could tell me a little bit about your process before Outbuild, what did scheduling and planning look like at WPC?
So as I mentioned, we were a Microsoft Project schedule-based company. We did have a mixture of the use of Excel documents in advance of a contract. So we would take an Excel sheet, work on our production rates, produce a preemptive contract schedule before we would go into a full-blown contract with a client. We would take that Excel base and then dump that into Microsoft Project. Larry and I were congregating before this, but Brittany, we were about 20 plus years with Microsoft Project.
Right.
So we got introduced in the early 2000s. So we'd been around Microsoft Project for quite some time. But between what we would use in pre-construction and then from a field orientation and into operations, we would use Microsoft Project. We spent lots of time over the last 20 years really trying to refine Microsoft Project to suit us. But that's where we came from. We were a Microsoft Project team with the use of support of Microsoft Excel.
Thank you. Yep, that's confirms like what I already know about your previous process. Could you elaborate on the issues with utilizing the combination of MS Project and Excel?
So just stating the fact that we had 2 of them is an issue, right, Brittany? So having 2 programs to do one task is obviously an inefficient process. We know Microsoft Project to be extremely resource loading, very high-end product, by the way, and we'll say that. But for what our usage was, what our ability to make it user-friendly, we were not harnessing it to its capabilities and vice versa. We didn't have a system that was otherwise conducive to what we wanted to use it for. So we had some inefficiencies just in the program itself to meet what our needs were. And then, what we were seeing from managing 2 schedules, one being an ownership schedule on a contract base, and then 2 being a construction schedule from our superintendent and project manager on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We're managing 2 different schedules. That in effect is a arduous process, but we were finding out that exactly what I mentioned is it was a process more than a tool. So we were finding out that people were creating a schedule, on a day-to-day, week-to-week task, and that in fact is what they were considering it. They were considering it to be a task and not a tool. So that and what we've really noticed in our transition into Outbuild is that inside of the construction industry, we were finding out that there was a lot of delays and or extensions in schedule. And though Outbuild, we never treated it as a silver bullet per se. We saw that it had capabilities and modules for us to help identify what the issues were in creating schedule extensions. We don't want to tell everybody on the call today that, we were focusing on how do we identify and show the client that there's a delay, but how do we also identify and show that there's a potential roadblock in advance of problems when it comes to our subcontractor teams? We found that Outbuild had all of those in one. So getting rid of two programs, getting rid of the inefficiencies just on a match per match on a software program that matches who your team is, and then really utilizing the tools within it that have capabilities for us to identify issues, point them out, have a plan to get through those, and or identify them on a delay aspect as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I like what you said. We're not just trying to communicate when delays happen and be reactive. We're really trying to focus on how do we prevent as many delays as we can to help the project run smoother. All right.
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
interject something if I can along Sam's point. When I first found out that we were going to transition into Outbuild for scheduling, I started looking at some of what Outbuild has online. One of the first things I saw was your roadblock tool that you have, and I thought that was a very interesting idea with a caution cone to show, hey, watch out because this is going to happen, right? And that's not necessarily something you're going to see in Microsoft Project. And there's a real benefit to that to make people accountable, whether it's us, our subcontractors, the client. It basically allows you to plan in advance and help set yourself up for success. So I think that's one big advantage that Outbuild has. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, no, I love to see my teams taking advantage of the roadblock functionality. I always say if I don't see any roadblocks on your look ahead, that's a red flag to me, and I will push to see why aren't roadblocks being utilized. Because if you are calling those out, that's the first step to preventing those and taking action on what your team needs. All right. So you spoke a little bit about the issues that you were experiencing with the two systems of MS Project and Excel. Do you think these issues were unique to WPC or a broader problem in the industry?
Yeah, definitely not unique to WPC. We feel like even in the, understanding our current employees that were either came from somebody else or brought in techniques, we also had a in-house scheduler for a long time, Brittany. And we know that technique was more of an industry-wide item that we were just experiencing at the same token. So what we saw was definitely not unique to us.
Yeah, and let me give you another example. It's not unusual to talk to our subcontractors and find out that they'll come out and say, listen, we really like working for WPC because you guys are always organized, you're ready for us, that kind of thing. So that tells me that other general contractors are not scheduling things very well. So to answer your question, I don't think it's a WPC only problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I was just on a subcontractor meeting today, actually, and it was interesting because they had Outbuild up and then they had a list of their RFIs and their submittals to go through. And I was like, hey, you guys can combine that because you can link your RFIs to your look ahead. So we want to avoid any double data entry or duplicate processes as much as we can. So I was glad I was on that call because I was able to point that out. All right. So I want to ask, because you already kind of spoke to kind of what drew you to Outbuild. Would you like to elaborate on what jumped out at you about Outbuild when you first saw it? I know, Larry, you said you mentioned roadblocks, but was there anything else that was like, yeah, we need to give Colin a call?
Yeah, you don't mind if I segue into the by fates introduction by any chance, do you, Brittany?
No.
So we all, folks on the call too, we all have those instances in your construction career that something happens that you just can't explain. So the Outbuild team found out about WPC and actually sent a box of cookies. And I know Alex and Brittany love this story, and so does Colin. But just so happens, I guess we're just a company of sweet tooths. But we found we found the box in the corporate kitchen. We looked up the tag, and we ended up we'll just call it by fate, researching into Outbuild. And some of the immediate things that jumped out is obviously the overlay of the master schedule with what we call a construction schedule. And we saw the ability to work in two schedules at the same time. And really, the main why that came from that is that we saw the ability for us to empower our superintendents to have a tool and not just be a task. So that was really clearly explained and displayed, Brittany, to be honest with you, from the time that we saw the initial introduction from a website, and then, Colin and team that came into it and showed us that unique feature that, hey, by the way, guys, you don't have to run two schedules. You can have one schedule that shows the contract. It basically holds parameters for your superintendent to work inside that. And then you have your look ahead module that, depending upon the complexity and or the ability of a superintendent to create additional look ahead items. We have a rule within WPC is that we have a standard operating procedure of what we expect from our supers, but we give them the flexibility to utilize this, and Outbuild has really expanded upon that and allowed us to do that. So those really stood out for us. And then obviously the ability to integrate with Procore. We became a Procore company about 3 years ago. So you mentioned RFIs, submittals, roadblocks, all the lot, and we're not having to run back and forth in between programs. They seamlessly integrate with each other. So making us more, efficient both upstream to the client and downstream to our subcontractor base. It was really easy, to be honest with you. It's really easy to see those features, see them displayed to us, and make the choice to switch.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know you've mentioned this along the way, but how has your experience been with Outbuild since you signed on in terms of transition?
Yeah, Larry and I were really trying to, put into very specific words. Words are really important to us about what we would give, from the initial experience. We felt like first and foremost that customer service has been off the charts. So anybody that's on the call will tell you that any of the abilities to work through a problem, Outbuilds, we were never treating it like a silver bullet. Like I mentioned that before, is that you can't just expect that you're going to have a software that's going to fix all your problems, right? But the customer service approach has really been solutions based, is what Larry and I have come up with. It's very, very approachable, from being there, being ready at any time, having a question, being able to answer it, but also working towards how does WPC work in schedules? Hey, we have other contractors that do things a certain way, but how do we help you guys work through what processes that you're looking for? So that's really been, the modus of my feedback, Brittany, in having a team that works with you to integrate it. We're going to have, at the company, tenured folks, right? Our medium tenure right now is about 15 to 20 years. So we're going to have people who have only experienced Microsoft Project. So them getting into Outbuild is always, you're going to have a little bit of pushback, right? Because that's what they're used to. And that change management piece is so key. But showing them that it's not just, yes, it's a task, but the benefits that are coming from the change in task are so much more exponentially greater to what we're seeing within our schedules. We've had, Larry, we've had 3 projects that have been fully run through it, from start to finish. Have had great success both up and downstream. And we've also had, the ability to start converting some of our schedules that were, midstream as we transitioned over into Outbuild. And that in fact too, Brittany, was extremely helpful, because this is, if you've got 5,000 items, 1,000 items, 500 items, to try to translate that from one program to the next. Granted, giving Outbuild credit here too, is that there's the ability to import and export. So it gave us the flexibility to continue to use those schedules that we had in Microsoft Project, export them into a file that's usable. But it was not a quick cold turkey, help us integrate into Outbuild and then, show by de facto of, the better procedure and better process that we're finding.
Yeah, let me just add that the availability of, whether it was Colin, Brittany, or others, to get on a Zoom meeting and talk about maybe some more information on Outbuild that we needed to understand, or the in-person meetings that both Brittany and Colin were willing to provide for us. Like we said, the support's been outstanding. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we have quarterly meetings, right? And that's part of the subscription and the service. We've had in-person meetings with Outbuild. We have, 24/7 roadside service, if you want to call it that. And that's been really helpful because it's not a light switch by any means when you're teaching somebody how to look at a different process, but it's been extremely beneficial to us. Absolutely.
Thank you both. Sam, I like what you said about kind of how we answer to WPC's processes and not just, a blanket experience. And that's what we really try to focus on it because I've worked with over 70 GCs at this point, and every client experience is going to be different. So we try to offer that customized support. So whether you need in-person trainings or, you want to kind of figure it out on your own, I'm gonna, let you use Outbuild how you want to utilize it, but also offer, best practices based off what I've seen work and not work, and customized training materials. So I I appreciate the positive feedback on the support level from everyone here at Outbuild. And you did mention it's been great upstream and downstream. Um, I do want to ask how the field team specifically is taking to Outbuild, though.
Yeah, the initial introduction had to do with, how do we change our subcontractor meetings? So anybody that's a GC knows that how important those are on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. That was the initial um, change management piece. So seeing how we run our subcontractor meetings, how do we display our schedules? How do we roll this out to our subcontractors? Obviously, that comes with the initial shock, but as they started to learn and see that the schedules were easier to read, that was a big takeaway from us is that, we would find a lot of times is we work so hard on the schedule and then we look at the trash can at the very end of the meeting and we find, schedules in the trash can because people can't read them. So we saw that our subcontractors started taking these home, using the paper printouts that we would have within our look aheads and in our weekly plans, but also how it became interactive on a web-based or a cloud-based platform. We weren't just a GC that would produce a schedule within Microsoft Project. We could invite people into the project itself. We could assign subs, vendors, owners for that matter within tasks that were in the schedule itself, and found out, not everybody's going to be involved in it. And, we're going to have some lower tier subs. When I say lower tier, meaning maybe our blinds contractor or something else like that, that may not participate. They want to be told when to come in, when not to come in, but your main MEPs, your main structure, those folks that have been working in, let's say a cloud-based format, maybe Procore, but want to be involved in the schedule. And, we still have our subcontractor foreman schedule meetings and whatnot in advance of the sub meetings, but their ability to look at the schedule at any time, anywhere, Brittany, has been extremely helpful and beneficial to them because it feels more transparent to them,
Yeah.
that they're not just getting a schedule slapped on a desk telling you that you
Mhm.
got to meet it when it's unrealistic and they hadn't been conferred with, in advance of a meeting.
Yeah, I think whenever you talk about blinds contractors, you have to make sure you're talking about or window coverings and that they can actually see. But the other thing about you, whenever you have a new program, whether it's Outbuild or anything else, you're going to have some people who jump on it and they start using it and they perform very well. You're going to have others it takes them a little while. I think most people realize that people in general are reluctant to change, right? They'd rather stay with what's comfortable and easy. So it's a transition, but I think it's going well for WPC. There's no turning back for us. We're moving forward with Outbuild and we really like it. And we like everything you've done. Let me add this before I forget about it. I really like the fact that you guys are constantly, I think I said it earlier, constantly looking for ways to improve it. And we do appreciate that.
That goes hand in hand with what we want to do, with our processes. We can't, we've been around for 51 years, but we want to be around for another 51. And how do we shape ourselves now in order to serve the future?
I'd love to hear it. All right, we're almost at the end of time here. I'm gonna leave with one final question and then give it back to Alex to close out. Any final thoughts you'd want to share with colleagues in the industry who are starting to think about making a change to their scheduling process?
Yeah, again, my statement reigns true is that any software, whether it's Outbuild or anything else, is that it's not a silver bullet. It's not meant to be a silver bullet that you've got to put in the time and effort to do so. Larry mentioned that, myself mentioned that, but the ability to look at what it produces as a tool versus a task is the biggest thing that we can say from our current experience. It's been, we're going on year 2. So we're really, really, really excited to see what expands. We appreciate, again, the attentiveness that we have received. But only good things, Brittany. Only good things that we've experienced thus far.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh,
I think the fact that it's cloud-based and it's so easy for everybody to access at any time of the day is very helpful too. So that's good.
perfect. Thank you both. All right, I'm out of questions.
Thank you all so much. I'm just going to put up a quick QR code for anyone who's interested to see a little bit more and actually want to see how Outbuild looks and feels and works. This will take you to a page where you can sign up for a 14-day free trial where you can actually get in there, test everything out, put your schedules in. And if you go ahead and do that, we'll also offer you a free guided workshop session to go along with that. So one of our account executives could kind of work through some of that, figuring out how your own process would happen in Outbuild. So we would love for you to get your hands on it. If anyone has any questions, please get them into the chat. I do see that there's one that came through on, does Outbuild connect with Alice? Right now, our integrations are with Procore and with Autodesk, and we are exploring multiple other integrations as well. So not currently one with Alice, but we do have APIs that can be connected to, and we do like to integrate with partners. So good to know that there's potentially some demand there. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, it looks like James is going to have a few. Maybe typing them live, or James, if you would prefer, you could also come off mute and ask. Well, I think I might have to let you come off mute though. Let me see. Oh, yeah, you would be able to now if you want, or you can keep typing. We'll wait a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually did sign up for the 14-day trial. We are a Procore user as well. I ran into everything WPC is saying is exactly the struggles I have. So I have a lean certification as well.
Okay.
I've joined a small company we're transitioning to medium size. We're an architect builder in Canada, Winnipeg, Manitoba, to be exact. You guys follow hockey, Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, right on. Tampa Bay Lightning, which it's still crazy to think we have a couple hockey teams in Florida, by the way.
Trust me, it was heartbreaking when I saw the Stanley Cup go there, but that's another story. But yeah, so we're in Winnipeg, and very passionate about construction, very passionate about lean, because a lot of the times, like he's meant, is like trying to express that we need answers. We need follow through. But most of the time I find it a struggle. So here are my questions. It's really the application of the field, because we can have the office have all these beautiful Gantt charts, has hence Primavera and an MS project, and you can have it. And lean construction says the further out you go and the more detail it is, the more wrong it is. How are you going to know you're going to be working on this on 2 years from now in the great, like, on that column? So that doesn't work. So you do milestones, and then you have the site trailer photo, which you guys start off with at the beginning with the sticky notes and all that stuff, which I get. But how, like, my question is with the software, the look aheads is like, that's the power, right? The site adds a whole bunch of stuff detailed. The question is to WPC, do you guys give access to that look ahead schedule to your trade partners, and they pre-populate it along with your site superintendent? So when you have the weekly plan, you're not all starting from scratch, or how does that work? That's
a great question. That's just a great question.
Fantastic question. You want to
Yeah. So let me go into that. So you absolutely want to do that if you're working on a large scale project where you have 300 activities that are going to happen that week. You're not going to want to spend the entire day in a pool planning session. So there should be uh, some work done prior to your meeting with subcontractors and getting agreements and having it at least a draft of what it's going to look like, and then you can modify it in your meeting, and that's going to save you a lot of time. Let me just also introduce another idea. We came up with actually two options. The look ahead is really good for what I would call the special operations where you need to do something and make sure everybody's got material there and its timing is going to go just right. Where you have 10 different buildings and you have thousands of activities taking place, what we like to do is we like to use the master plan rather than a look ahead and just introduce that in the meeting to go, here's where we're going to go. And then that way the work is already done for you. So you actually have both options, the look ahead and the what your regular schedule. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, so I'm just going to summarize from what I understand. So most of our projects are not as complicated as you described. So this is going back to the Procore integration as well. I've noticed that the look aheads, the it seems like the look aheads, as you add a bunch of tasks in the look aheads, it does not go back to the master plan. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and Brittany, we've had this on multiple instances, right? Talked about it, and I would let Brittany answer just to make sure that the high level understanding is there, because your contract and or master schedule is never meant to change, right, James? That is what's set in stone. That's what you've agreed
That's
to
right.
the client, and unless there, as you know, Outbuild has just updated this. It's a schedule modification request. And Brittany, help me with the new term that's there too.
Yeah, schedule impact request.
Schedule impact. So unless that request is made, James, it never modifies the upstream
Master.
and or master schedule, which I love that, by the way, because if I'm looking at, from an owner's perspective, I expect you to meet X, Y, and Z, whether it's the next milestone and or the end date. And if you're modifying that, we should know. We should know from a notification base, and maybe that's the GC's problem, or what's being held up. What's the client holding us up on that aspect, and we can notify them through a roadblock that's upcoming. Anything else like that helps us understand the immediate or upcoming delay that's otherwise forthcoming.
So would you say then, as a question to WPC then, and maybe Brittany, you can chime in, but so the look ahead, so if I just ignore the look ahead right now, and let's say we are 4 months into a project and I have another 8 months to go, so it's not a massive project, a year project, and we are just continually every week we're updating the master schedule, but at that point in time, we start adding more detail like you've shown in your webinars, and I've done quite a bit of research. I nerded out on the weekend on Outbuild, and I saw you can add a bunch of details just like you can in an MS project, but you can do
Yep.
it here. And then that gets uploaded automatically to Procore. And then then is that where you do your look aheads? Like I'm just trying to because the look aheads and the master schedules seem like they want to work together, but I'm struggling the practicality of the working of it. And
Yeah,
that's because I've been training I just found look aheads on Procore about 2 weeks ago and started doing that. And I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I added a bunch of stuff and it didn't, and then I signed it on Procore to the teams and that's great. But no one can actually look at it on their app as they're assigned the work. And so I just feel like there's this it feels like it's so close because I would like to assign my workers their daily task, from their phone, because at the daily huddle everybody goes away and then should come back by the end of the day and kind of say, here's a picture of it done, we've completed it. So it's kind of more interactive as opposed to
Sure.
leaving it to the site superintendent. So from WPC, like how have you crossed those bridges? How does it look like on a week to week? And are you guys like a lean company?
Yeah, we'll probably be a little bit more complex, James, on the build outs and details and schedule and whatnot. But what we like about Outbuild, and not sales pitching here too, is that we have flexibility, right? You just mentioned the ability to work inside of the master schedule
Yeah,
itself and update
yeah,
it. If it's a little less complex, let's talk about one of our renovations that maybe has 15 items. I can update that. And we need to make sure that we're within those constraints on a week-to-week basis. We're just reviewing that now. If I'm in the electrical piece of that 15 item schedule, I can go into my look ahead and develop that, build that out. And it may be order materials, deliver materials, install the materials, and inspect the materials. But that would be my week to week look on a very less complex schedule. But the
Okay.
module and the look ahead would give us that opportunity to do
Right.
that. And we utilize it in that fashion. So we utilize the master schedule a lot on a schedule update process. And then
Got
we
it.
really go into the look ahead as we deem fitting. We're getting into a fire final. We're getting into critical path items that have to do with scheduled delivery of cabinets, cab install, countertops, and plumbing finishes, those kind of things. And we'll end up detailing out with inside of the look at itself. Does that make sense? But I tell you that you have the option, and Brittany, you can probably expand on what's seen from Procore and back and forth so that James understands where his work is being utilized as a tool and not just not all for naught.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and expand. I'm going to keep it very simple. I won't go into the weeds of this, but schedule should be created in Outbuild. Look ahead should be created in Outbuild. And the reason being Procore has look ahead, but the look ahead in Procore is just a filter of the schedule that you can add details, but they don't feed back to the schedule. Now in Outbuild, you can add those details within the look ahead, but also take advantage of roadblocks and schedule impact requests. So as things are changing, as you're planning, week by week, your schedule is being updated automatically through progress coming from the look ahead. And also, if there are any date changes, those schedule impact requests are being reported from the field that can then be approved at the schedule level by typically like a project manager or scheduler. So we want to keep you and the whole project team in Outbuild is the short of it, to take advantage of all the tools that Outbuild has. And then when the schedule does change, you can push that updated schedule to Procore. And that's how you can link your submittals and RFIs from Procore to Outbuild. I hope that helps.
Yeah, for sure. And the last question, I guess, for WPC is are you able to do poll planning sessions? What I found back in the day when Lean was being rolled out in a company that I was with here, one of the top 40 firms, I've worked for three top 40 firms in Canada, and they're all have massive resources, and they were rolling out Lean, and all the trade partners had to show up in the trailer and wait their turn and all this stuff. And I found it okay, like it's nice to have everybody in a room, but like with technology nowadays with Zoom, like I don't feel like I need everybody in the trailer. I feel like I can do this online. The question I have is, can you do poll planning with like people like all three of us, all four of us here, we would have the computer and we would have all outbuild and we would be kind of collaborating on like a shared master schedule, or I don't know how
Yeah,
that works,
sure.
because it just to me that seems very intuitive versus, and I would have more buy-in because subtrades are super busy, and for them to do it in their vehicle or in their office versus driving down is I feel like would have more buy-in. So tell me how you guys do poll planning sessions. Do you do it in person with sticky notes, or do you do it with Outbuild and on the screen? Like, how do you do those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it all for the most part, we would love, James, for our subcontractors to come in and we all sit down and go through it so we can all look eyeball to eyeball. And that's just a preference. But since we have the ability from a web-based perspective and having Zoom and or Microsoft Teams, we typically, and just giving you the full soup to nuts, but we would have a contractor master schedule built, and then we would pull plan inside of the look ahead. Okay. So, hey guys, here's what we have to do from a constraint aspect is you have date X to date Y to produce drywall. Let's just pick out one thing. How do
Yep.
we look on a pull planning basis on how do we get from X to Y, but do it from X to M, and that's really where we utilize it. It's been extremely helpful, and I know that you sound very educated in the construction field too, is that us having the pull plans, the biggest thing I can give back on the feedback is that we do that really early. For us, we're a multi-box, so we're going to repetitively run into the same tasks, right? So how do we learn before we get to task one that we're going to repeat 10 times? How do we do that faster on the first one, but then also get better on two, three, four, five, and six? So we'll pull plan in advance of the initial kind of look ahead build out is the way we really use it to use our pull planning ability.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about people being able to zoom into your meeting, if we're on Microsoft Teams in one of our job trailers where we have a monitor up and we have the pull planning schedule up, then anybody that's on that Teams meeting will be able to see in real time what we're doing. And then when the meeting's over and you go into and anyone goes into any of our subcontractors go into their Outbuild schedule and they refresh it, they're going to see the latest information in that look ahead.
Yeah, and I'll expand there. So like I mentioned before the meeting, we have a pull plan, right, that helps develop the look ahead, James.
Yeah.
From the contract schedule, it helps develop it on a full detail basis. But then in our subcontractor meeting that week, let's say your drywall material slipped by a day, the superintendent has it up and is able to slide that task. We love this about Outbuild. You can slide that task over one day, and that's real-time information. We push that into the master, or not into the master schedule, but we push it into from a schedule update aspect. Procore's updated at that aspect, and everybody sees real time that our drywall delivery moved one day. We have it. Everybody's feeling it, living it, not saying, "Hey guys, the piece of hard paper that we've got is actually wrong by a day this week."
Right.
So we love that aspect that it's push to play.
So Sam, if you move it over by date, that's the site superintendent. Is he doing it on the master schedule or is he doing it on
He's
look?
in look ahead. He's doing it in the look
But
ahead.
how does that get tied back to the master schedule?
Yeah, and that's where I kind of, Brittany, I can lean on you from a little bit of this, but as long as you're within the parent tasks,
Yes.
let's call it that time frame.
The bookmarks. The bookmarks.
The bookmarks. As long as you're within that, it will never push Brittany a change in those unless you ask for a schedule modification or a schedule impact request. Now, I say this to you because you're going to complete tasks faster sometimes. It's good to input when stuff gets completed faster, or if you don't want the client to see that, because we all want to own our float, right?
We own our float. That's our baby. You can't touch
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So whoever uses it first gets to keep it. So
Yeah.
what I'll tell you is that we don't use schedule modification requests or schedule impacts on time saved, but on time extended. That's when we'll put them into play.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think I could probably go on forever. I'm super intrigued. I thank you guys for WPC for your generosity of information and time, and to the Outbuild team for allowing me to ask as many questions as I did. So I will gladly go back on mute. Thank you very much.
James,
Stay
one
warm,
last
James. Stay
sorry.
warm.
Before I hop off here, I do want to encourage you to join the Outbuild community. I know you're in a free trial right now. You still can join. Anybody's welcome to join the Outbuild community. Every Friday we host a live office hours. It's like a live training session for anybody who wants to attend. And
Okay.
during that training session, you can ask as many questions. So that's every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
And that community is in the help center. So that question mark in the right-hand corner of app.outbuild.com, that's where you can join the community.
Excellent.
Thank you all so much for the great conversation. I'm sure that was really helpful. I see pretty much everyone was hanging on to follow along with that. So thank you. For anyone who wants to dive deep, in addition to those office hours, you can, at our website, you can also book a call with us, and we're happy to have all the conversations you want to have and answer all the questions you might have. And we can really customize that towards your specific use case. Thank you so much, Sam and Larry. This has been very enlightening. And Brittany, thank you so much for joining. Your expertise is always appreciated. We really look forward to continuing to partner with you guys, and we will, I'm sure, be talking again soon. And thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate your time.
All right.
Appreciate you
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Be well.